from one segue to the other. It's all good because it's all truth. It's all God. We're going to look at the last parable in this month's series, which has been the Bible, the ultimate guidebook for living. So we're looking at, as if you didn't get an idea from the practitioners, the sower and the seed, that parable, because it's so powerful and rich. So I'm excited about this one. And I'm going to read you the parable itself, and then we'll break it down metaphysically and how we can practically implement it in our lives. And he spoke many things to them in parables, and said, Behold, a sower went out to sow, and when he had sown, some seed fell on the roadside, and the fowls came and ate it. Other seed fell upon the rock, where there was not sufficient soil. And it sprang up earlier because the ground was not deep enough. But when the sun shone, it was scorched, and because it had no roots, it dried up. And other seed choked it. And some of the seed fell in the good soil and bore fruit. Some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. So this really is a deep and rich parable, deeper than it might look just when you read it, when you really go into depth of each line in it. And a close look at it is that its teachings are about 4 levels of being, 4 states of consciousness, 4 levels of receptivity to the words of truth, 4 levels of openness to God's word. So we are the soil. Which we're going to get into which category out of those 4 we fit into, and how we can really up-level our soil, fertilize it. And so, so there was a parable. This was a parable that people of Jesus' day could understand. So this is why we're going to just break it down a little historic, as Veronica said, ancient wisdom, because it's all ancient wisdom. It's all pointing to the same truth. And so the sower walked around with a bag of seed. And as he walked around, the way to plant it then was to take a handful and just scatter it. And this is what they did in Jesus' day. They scatter it. And so with this gesture, he would scatter again, and the seed would fall where it may, upon prepared and unprepared soil. And so as he walked near the edges of the field, some of the seed, it fell by the roadside, and some among the thorns, and some on rocky areas, and then some fell into the good or fertile soil. So the people of those times could understand how you sow seed. And the method of sowing seed is called broadcasting, which I thought was very cool. Broadcasting. So who is the sower? The sower is God. Sowing the seeds of divine truth. That's what this divinity does. That's what Spirit does. That's what God does. Sows the seeds of truth. Broadcasting, if you will, the divine truths all the time. There's nothing else that this infinite intelligence can do except to impart his seeds of truth. And our minds are like the soil. We are the soil upon which the grain, the seeds fall. What we do with the seed that falls upon us is determined then by our state of mind. How fertile is our mind? Our minds are like the soil. You hear Holmes many times, and many of the New Thought writers talk about the seed and the soil to describe this creative process that we're all using. That's how we create. We think the thought. It goes into our soil, which is our subconscious or subjectivity, and becomes the effect in our lives. different minds are of different levels, or different levels of consciousness, then are receptive or not to the seed. So the mind of humankind is symbolized in the parable by the different kinds of soil. So we're going to go over those different kinds of soil. Remember this, that the seed is always the same. It's the soil that's different. And in his book, which is a great book, Learn How to Live, The Meaning of the Parables, Irving Seal wrote, putting it more precisely, he says, certain soils allow the seed to express its potentialities more fully than others. The analogy to our lives is then that human beings make different and variable responses to the truth of life. Every human mind has its history, its conditioning, its training. These furnish the light by which that mind sees the world. Every court of law knows how much witnesses can differ. This is still Irving. 3 different witnesses reporting the same event will relate different details. One man says that the man driving the second car, or the first car, had a black hat. The other one would say a brown hat. And then the third person, observing the same exact, I have to read this, he's writing this. We'll say he didn't have a hat on at all. So the parable of the sower stresses, he writes, the fact that different kinds of soil make different responses to the same seed in order to show us that different kinds of minds respond differently to the truth. The seed is reality, truth, but truth is always qualified and conditioned by the mind that receives it. And that's what our talk is about today. How fertile is your mind? So Jesus is suggesting that there are 4 levels of receptivity, or 4 levels of consciousness, illustrated by these 4 different types of soil. You have the roadside soil, the rocky soil, the thorny soil, and the good or fertile soil. So look at each one briefly. Some seed fell by the roadside, and the fowls came and ate it. The soil by the roadside was hard and compacted because of the people, animals, and wagons traveling back and forth over it over and over again, so it made it hard. And so the rain, when it would fall, could not even penetrate this soil. So the seed could only sit on top. It couldn't go below. And the birds, the fowl, would come and eat it because it couldn't take root. It couldn't go underneath. So what kind of mind do you think that represents? Pretty obvious. A closed mind, possibly. Irving Seal also wrote, in this class is the cynic, the skeptic, the dogmatic, and all of whom generally refuse to accept anything new. These are unteachable, who have closed their minds and have said, there is nothing more to learn. I refuse to disturb my comfortable opinions. In this category, 2 are the negative minds, he says, who meet every ray of sunshine, I know people like this, by sending up a dark cloud. Maybe you know someone. From themselves. Every beam of light which approaches them must be filtered through their fog bank first. You might know a few people like that. Not anyone here? Or else you wouldn't be here. And those can seem like harsh words that I just read, but I bet we can all think of people like that. You try to share your beliefs with them. Walk away with a headache from that one. Why don't try to share them unless someone asks genuinely, what is your belief? You know, what is it that you practice at Joyful Gathering Spirit? What is that place? You know, a cult? Well, Ernest Holmes defined cult as a group of people that would have their thinking taken away from them. And science of mind teaches to empower people to think for themselves. That is the difference between a cult and the spiritual teachings that we have here at Joyful Gathering. So these kinds of people then, they shut off anything new that come in. They stop learning. Just listening to Napoleon Hill too. And it's like, you don't stop learning. You keep on growing. You keep on becoming more of that which you desire in your life. And you attract more of it into your life. And then you have the rocky soil. The other seed fell upon the rock, where there was not sufficient soil. And it sprang up earlier because the ground was not deep enough for it to go into. It couldn't take root. So it's shown and it was scorched. And because it has no root, it dried up. It didn't make it. So the second kind of soil illustrated by this parable is the rocky soil. And this is so with certain types of enthusiastic, emotional people who respond really readily to all of these teachings, but they cannot stick with it. This is something I've seen happen over the many years. When people get all enthusiastic and they're really into this and they take the classes and they learn how to work it, they learn how to use this creative process, which is infallible, and then they just let it be. They walk away and they go back to the old way of being. And that's not becoming. And I was driving here today, I am only moving forward. Joyful Gathering is only moving forward. We're not going backward. And so it comes the same thing with these teachings. As you stick and practice and use the affirmations and use the prayer and use all of these beautiful tools that we have, we can only go forward. Strong affirmations will keep you moving if you falter, because we will. We'll have things show up. So the most vital stage in the life of a plant is after it has sprouted, but before it has deep roots. A good gardener knows this, and he keeps the ground watered so that the roots can develop. Once this occurs, less attention is needed, those deep roots. So on rocky ground, however, roots don't grow properly, and the plant will wither and die. And Irving Seal also wrote, divine ideas also need to be nurtured with care. They need to be firmly established on the subconscious level and grow deeper and deeper roots there. Otherwise, spiritual progress will be temporary and initial gains lost. In this parable, he writes, the plant withered because it had no roots. This implies that we need clear realization of the root or the spiritual source of our being. And acceptance in theory is not enough. So we can read all the books that we want to read. We can attend all the seminars and workshops and classes that we ever want to attend. But unless we actually practice and use this truth, it can't take root in our subconscious, because that subconscious is running. It's running the show until we become aware that we have conscious thought, that we can control our feelings and our thinking. The other seed fell among the thistle, and the thistle sprang up and choked it. Here is rich and fertile soil containing all the elements necessary for a good production, but it has thorns in it. It has weeds in it. And agriculture is in this continuous battle to grow, because that's what the soil does, it gives. But when you have a lot of thorns and weeds growing, it takes the nutrients also. So that is why weeding is so important. And any good farmer knows that. You weed and keep an orderly, clean field. And it's the same with us and our consciousness. Check those thoughts when they come up. Be aware of them. Because we're going to go in and out of these stages, but I think the third and fourth stage is where a lot of us are. And so that's good. That's really good. So the third level of consciousness, this soil, is the one who has certain spiritual ideas rooted in it, but then other ideas come and crowd them out, as the weeds crowd out the healthy crop, the healthy seed from growing. And Holmes, I love this, so this is a great reading. In this thing called You, I think we still have it in the back, great book. He writes this. This is Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science. It is important that you maintain a strict censorship over your thinking. Just as you watch your garden, that foreign seed shall not fall upon it, producing an undesirable plant, so must you refuse entrance to any thought you do not wish to see manifested in your life. Guard well this garden of your mind. It is God's garden of your soul. So beautiful. It is your Garden of Eden, wherein you may grow your fondest desires and hopes, blossoming into fulfillment. Or if you permit, the weeds of destruction, fear, and doubt will choke out the beauty of hope until despair alone remains. Watch carefully, then, this garden of your soul. Plant there, still doing Holmes, plant there only seeds of happiness, of joy, of peace, and of goodwill. It may be necessary to cultivate your garden, to uproot the weeds and straighten out the rows, planting new seeds, new ideas, broader visions, and deeper realizations of life. And that soil, as I said, is in our subconscious. It's where our memory is. It's where all of our beliefs are. They lie in our subconscious, and they are activated. We know when they're activated, because fear and doubt and anger and all of those triggers, but we can work with that. We can accept that. We don't suppress it, because when we suppress those things that come up because they don't feel good, they continuously operate in our subconscious. So they come up for us to accept them, to recognize them, not to push them away, but also to, as in the reading, to neutralize those thoughts and replace them with those thoughts of happiness, of joy, of well-being, of all the beauty that you want to show up in your life, because we can do that. We can do that. In the book, The Jesus Parables, Finding Our God Within, which I've been reading, the author suggests that in order for truth not to fall among the thistles, action is necessary. In two respects. We always go to that action, because we can meditate all day long, and then when we receive the divine guidance, let's follow it. Let's do the action. And the action can be mental. It could be emotional. And it could be physical. But follow the action. In two respects, though. First, we pull out the thorns of negative belief and attitudes from our soul. And then replace them. Replace them with those things that we desire to experience. And really, they're things, and things are good, but what we really want to manifest, I believe, are states of being. We want to feel peace. We want to feel the love. We want to feel joy. We want to feel contentment. Then all things are added, but those states of being are what we're truly talking about here. When we go deeper than the car, than the home, than the relationship, and all the careers and everything else, what do we want to feel? So, a pastor was revealing an impassioned. Let me just tell you about the TV for a minute. Yeah, sorry. Made some people's heads spin. Because a lot of the fear that we are is the collective unconscious. So there's a lot of this is in the race consciousness, as Holmes calls it. And a lot of that comes through, we know, through the media, through TV. So, I have a story. A pastor who was delivering this impassioned speech, the sermon on the evils of television. It steals away precious time that could be better spent on other things, he said. And he advised the congregation to do what he and his family had done. We put the TV away in our closet. That's right, his wife murmured, and it gets pretty crowded in there. By taking these steps, we give positive ideas and resources of the kingdom of heaven, which is within, a chance to grow and increase within us. The use of affirmations, daily meditation, prayers, all of these make such a difference in weeding out our mentality, our thoughts, and our feelings in our garden of our soul. There is a gradual ascent in consciousness illustrated by these three types of soil we just discussed. And the first one is that it is impenetrable. The second one is shallow. And the third one is rich with possibilities of generous harvest. It's rich with that. It's those weeds. And finally, Jesus talks about the type of soil that will take the seed and allow it to flourish. And to flourish, it would be in good or fertile soil. So another seed, this is in the parable, another seed fell in good soil and bore fruit, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. So the good soil symbolizes the fourth level of consciousness, the consciousness that is open and receptive to divine ideas. How open and receptive is your mind to the divine ideas? Because they're always there. Consciousness that is open to it. The individual with this consciousness thinks and speaks and lives according to their divine nature and will be tremendously benefited by this parable, because it is, and this is where I say we can go in and out of that third and fourth level. I believe I'm going to go on the rocky one, and I don't want to go on the other one. I want to be, and I am in the third and fourth level, because sometimes that crop, those weeds come up. But that's when we go and we weed, we pull them out, and we replace them with the seed of the plant that we wish to grow in our lives. And it is interesting to note that in the Aramaic words that were translated into the word bore, they actually meant kept on bringing forth or continuing to yield. So the original Aramaic meaning of the words bore fruit meant to yield constantly. Constantly doesn't mean just one time. This is not a one-time deal. It is constant, so we must be constant in our weeding. Because the reward is so great. That's why we do this. Because the reward, 100-fold, comes back to us. The joy, the peace, the love, the abundance. As with everything in this Bible, this parable is about you. It's about you. The Bible is this guidebook for living, and it's about your relationship to a higher power, to God. Each level we have discussed: the roadside level, the rocky level, the thorny level, and the fertile level. They're not levels of other people's consciousness, but they're the levels of you and me. So I invite you to think where you are in your stage or unfoldment of these different soils. And here are some questions real briefly, then I'll bring it to an end. And here are some questions for each level, so you can kind of figure out which level you're in. Are you closed to the idea of greater and greater possibilities in your life? Is your initial response to see reasons why it can't be done even before it happens in your life? Are you quick to see the worst? If so, you might be at the roadside level, where the truth really hasn't sunk in at all. It's on the surface, didn't even go in. Do you approach truth teachings in fits and starts? Begin, stop, gaining great enthusiasm and joy, because this stuff really works. This is powerful stuff. And then stop. Do you get easily discouraged if something doesn't go the way you desired? If so, these could be indicators of the rocky level, where roots really don't have a chance to take hold. Are you pretty well steeped in these teachings, but negativity and fear keep cropping up? These mental tapes from the past still have a way of blocking the good. Despite your work and your growth, old fears, lack, and limitation will pop up. Sounds like that's the thorny level. Those are the weeds from the past, okay? So I did not ask those questions for us to feel bad, because I don't like the spiritual guilt that I sometimes witness. It's to know where we stand and how we can grow those seeds of what it is we really wish to manifest in our lives. To grow the seeds of joy, of happiness, of peace, of abundance. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Since the power is active everywhere and all times, and the seed of truth is readily available, it's always present, the truth, the faith, the path, the truth, the faith, and the path to progress then is always open. It's open. When you hear open and receptive, it means more than just energetically. It means thinking. How open is your mind? Each moment is poised to be the perfect moment for us to wake up. Each moment is poised to be our perfect moment to wake up. So whether you are and you have ears, wherever you are and you have ears, I invite you to hear this, to hear this. You can be the fertile soil. It takes diligence, and it does take discipline. I'm going to tell you, it takes discipline, it takes diligence, it takes energy. But it's so worth it. What are the alternatives? The same thing over and over again? No, we're becoming more. So we're raking away all of those old weeds. So this morning, these seeds of truth are being broadcast. They're broadcast. Be the fertile ground on which that seed falls. And you and I will all be richly blessed. So